you know, Christmas used to be banned in America. So, yeah, been out on a few walks recently. Not enough to create one vlog, as it were. So this is over the span of like, well, the November lockdown really. So that's what, three and a half weeks worth of plodding around. Some days I haven't gone out because the weather's past being funny, or other things have come up, like things to do with home and other friends and that. And just general lockdown where you're not meant to be outside if you don't have to be, but you know, at least once a week I've been out taking a few photos here or there. Not particularly interesting, but I have had the opportunity to play with the Canon 70-200 L lens, not one of the newer ones that are like £2,000, but the older one, which was on a sale on their website, and the Canon L lens 24-70. Yeah, so I've been playing with the Canon 24-70 and the 70-200. I can definitely see how I'm going to use the 70-200 in more the summer months, or when lockdowns eased off again. Not that it's going, you know, COVID's not going away, but just when we're allowed to go out and do a bit more, and the summer and things like that. It's a bit of a heavy lens. Yeah, when we're allowed out a bit more to do more stuff, then the 70-200 f4 will work really well for photographing surfers at a distance and sports in general, as well as being able to catch things that are just out of range, or even portraits. The f4, and if you go to like 100mm, because of its barrel distortion, the depth of field looks it looks more than it is, which for some images are going to work really nicely and really well. For others, not so much. But over the last 3 or 4 weeks, I've definitely been using the 70-200 as my main lens. It does really well. It fits on the camera. It doesn't throw the balance off too much. So although it is a bit heavy, it's not encompassing to hold. You know, it's quite versatile. It allows me that bit of range and a bit of breadth room, so I can get things that are across a road, or you know, just out of arm's reach, as it were. Again, f4 still, so it's not the shallowest of lenses or the deepest of bokehs, but it still does an overall good job. Focuses really quickly. I don't know how well it's focusing on my face because I can't see the back of this one. I'm using the Canon 7D, where I did say I'd use the M50 for more video stuff, and I've got the M50 in my bag, but just from taking photos and walking around, it was just easier to record this bit using the camera to hand. Yeah, so at the moment, just walked from down past Wimborne bench or something, couldn't read the sign, reading's not my strong point, and just heading back to Keston Ponds. And I might head off somewhere else, not too sure yet, but we'll work that out when we get to it. Yeah, I've been really enjoying this sort of mistier, more foggy sort of mornings. I should have got out earlier and it would have been a lot thicker and would have helped with like the depth, you know, shallowed everything in a bit. I've definitely done better this year in terms of making videos and photographs than I did last year, but that's more down to having an extortionate amount of free time, thanks COVID. But yeah, I feel I could have done better, could have made more videos on things if I'd sat down and put my brain to it, but I'm happy with what I've done. I hope you are too. So yeah, I think what comes next again is, as I always keep saying, is a bit more planning, a bit more thinking through things and looking how I want to present things, and the sort of beach project that I'm doing is going quite well. Sorry for the untamed look again. I mean, my hair's always like this, but this is very, very discombobulated, and I've been out and about. Where did I go? I went Keston, I went to South Norwood, which is not too many miles away. I think I went across a few other fields here and there, took some photos, mainly using the, there you go, the Canon 24-70 f4 image stabilized. It says ultrasonic, but it's not a USM motor, I don't think. It's a bit noisier than other lenses I've used to make videos. It's not the loudest, it's not the quietest. So it's done quite well. It's the camera 7D Mark II, which is a crop sensor, so you're not quite actually getting the 24-70. You're getting something like 50 to 1 something, in and around ballpark numbers, not really sitting here doing the math. Doing the math is important, understanding what the lens actually converts to on different things is important to understand focal length and what that does to the image. But there's loads of different sayings and different ideas and principles and philosophies and concepts within photography that you can either follow or bin or carry on with, all of which are neither here nor there really. I think the important thing about photography is to take the image, take the photograph. The lens, the camera that you have with you at the time is the bit that matters. Whether you know exactly that, you know, actually this image could have been done with a 70. Yes, it could have. Yes, it might have been better technically. It might have been better narratively, which is the main point of photography, but the narrative may have been clearer if you used a different lens or a different standing point to make the difference up between having a telephoto lens and having this one. But at the end of the day, the whole point is to tell a story, or even if it's not to tell a story and you're just taking it because it's an interesting moment in time and you want to capture what you see, as with like catching the birds in flight. You can catch birds in flight with this lens if you know the settings and understand how birds move and you've got the knowledge of what you're shooting. Yes, it'd be better to shoot it with a telephoto, which again, I'll talk to you about this one in a little bit and I'll go more in depth in another video, but telephoto's good for, you know, wildlife photography and things, but if all you've got on you at the time is this, it's good enough, it will do the same job. But I do like this, it gives me the same as the 24 lens I used to use on this to do the video and do other bits, but this allows me to have a bit more range. I can go from the 24 to the 70 or the 50 to whatever. It allows for a nice consistent range of f4. This is why it's an L lens. You can usually tell L lenses by the little, refocus, there you go, the red line on the lens, which is nice. But again, the L lens over the purpose of the lens doesn't really matter. You can get a 24-70 at the sort of budget end of Tamron, Sigma or even Canon and they will all do the same job. The brand naming and what that brand's principles are do help, and you can find arguments on either side of the board for, you know, Nikon's this and Canon's that and Tamron does this and Lumix lenses are that. As long as it's good enough, I think it's good enough. That's a silly thing to say. That makes no sense in context to just saying the words. But can I see what I'm shooting clear enough that if I showed the image to somebody else, they knew what I would be looking at on purpose? If you've got something, you know, so going back, those lens baby ones that are like little tilt shift ones, they're not properly tilt shift, but they're very good. is that lens good enough to photograph the bird? Well, because of where the focus pulls and drops off of, probably not. And then showing the image to somebody else, the bird's out of focus, you haven't got any autofocus settings, so you can't track the bird, you're just having to guess at where it is. The lens isn't good enough. But something, you know, again, doing the comparison in focal lengths doesn't really matter. This thing tracks as fast as the 70-200. It tracks as fast as the Sigma 1-4 I've got. It's tracked as fast as the Tamron 150-600 I had. But going back to the, I'm waffling on. I'm waffling on a lot. I do that sometimes. Just chatting. You get in your own head and you just blurt things out. And being dyslexic, I don't write scripts. Don't be silly. Like, it's important to learn to read and write. Reading and writing is a very important skill. Everyone should have it. I have it to a degree. 24-70. It's got a nice big element in the front, so it's letting in a fair amount of light, as well as the aperture blades and things inside going to f4 consistently allow me to get nice shallow depth of fields consistently through images. It allows you to keep things consistent. It's reasonably lightweight, so when I'm holding it in the middle, most of the weight of this is back here, which from the size of it would still make sense. You know, you might think it would be nicely balanced. It's a little bit camera body side, but that's easier because you've usually got more hands on this than you do on the lens. It's very fast to autofocus, and it's very well built. It's a very solid lens. F4 or F2 only came down to monetary differences. You know, the cost of a F2 is like £1,000, £1,500. This was considerably cheaper, and if I wanted to, I would have gone. Well, if I needed to or wanted to, I could have gone even further down in price. But because I had the 24 and a 50, and that I didn't want the same quality aspects as those three in one lens, I wanted something that was a bit better, so that's why I went for the f4. What am I going to do with this from here on? So, being that this is middle of December 2020, not the funnest year in history, but we should get a refund on this year. Not in terms of monetary, but in terms of 2020 Mark II, not 21. 2020 Mark II, like the camera bodies, Mark II. Slightly better, slight improvement, but here or there. Trips to Newquay were put on hold, and a few other trips to different beaches and things were put on hold. And I did fail in my attempts to get more portraits for the project. Somewhat due to that, somewhat due to my own apathy and lack of drive this year. Which is not a good thing. You should always try to get up and get out and do something, but just not had it. Doesn't matter though, that's life. Do better next year. Yeah, so my plan is I've got my 100 to 400 for shooting from land to surf to sports in the distance where I can't get in the water. I've got the housing, which we went over in a previous video. We have got the housing that I went over in a previous video that I'm going to shoot in the water with more this year. I need to get my swimming up. 2020 has made me very cardio negative, you know, in terms of my ability to do things. So from now until summer, putting in the cardio work to get that up. Yeah, so that's going to be in the water with the M50 videos and photos of surfing and other things and water sports in general. For mid-distance landscape work and just things in the mid-range, for landscape work and things in the mid-range, we've got the 70 to 200 again. Repeating what I said a minute ago, more of a discussion on this later. But this will be for middle distance, maybe surfers coming out the water, a couple of portraits. I want to see how good it is in terms of street photography. It's not a subtle lens, so I'd be interested to see how this communicates in terms of street photography. Now I've got 24 to 70 for specific portraits, more landscapey things.